Welcome to episode 89 of Instant Expertise Marketing. Yes, we are still talking about AI, but
And going to
today,
be for a while.
but today it's from the perspective of the traditional trend model framework. That is, we are currently somewhere between innovators and early adopters within the trend model curve, but you might be asking yourself, why not hold out to be in the majority or even a laggard? That's the prudent thing to do, right?
Yep.
Well, we're here to break it down for you today. I'm Yvette Brown, co-founder of XPROMOS. I became an entrepreneur at 23 by starting a promotions agency with my then 29-year-old business partner, Shari Nomady.
And I'm Shari Nomady. By now, I know you all know that Yvette and I approach business from very opposite ends of the spectrum. And we do still, after all these years, come to the same conclusions on how we will help our clients succeed. You guys know we often discuss technology using trend model, but in reality, the trend model is what drives all kinds of businesses from high tech to consumer goods. Whether that's a new flavor combination, a plush toy, fashion, marketers across all these brands, they have to evaluate not only where they are in the cycle, but this is the crash and burn fad, or is it a long sustaining trend? And sometimes that's difficult to assess, right, Yvette?
Absolutely. And, fad versus trend is a topic for another day.
Absolutely.
I know some of our friends in the toy industry are still surprised that the unicorns, which they thought was going to be a fad, turned out to be a trend, and they're still with
Yep.
us.
Yep.
So, but before we get into that upper division course on trend tracking, we're going to need to hit the basics in the 101 class. So, here's the thing. The trend model looks like that bell curve model from middle school math class. It turns out that thing was actually important and relevant to life.
Well, I
Um,
didn't pay attention.
exactly. And, in fancy terms, the technical name is the normal distribution curve. And basically, that means that with most things in life, you can predict that 68% of your data will be in the big middle section, right? That big part of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
And that, kind of more importantly, 95% of your data will be within two standard deviations of that very middle section. And this is an algebra 2, so we're not going to walk through the big deal calculations on how you figure out a standard deviation and apply it. But basically, you just need to know that on the bell curve, um, the standard part is in that middle. There's a couple little tails on either end. The main part of the tail is the to the right and the left. Those are those standard deviations that, and if you take the middle plus those two little parts, you get to 95%. The little thing that flattens out to the edge, that is the very early innovators and the very late portion of the last to the party laggards.
Okay, so that ends the math portion of today's session. Thank God Yvette walked you through that part. But here's how it relates to the trend model. Thinking about what Yvette just described, the innovators at the far left of the curve, those final outliers, the 2.5% of the population. Next comes the early adopters. That's about 13.5% who make up that group to the left of the giant middle. Then you have the early and late majority. This is the major section of the bell curve. That's at 68%. And then finally, you have those laggards that we talk about now and then, who are always late to the party and make up the final 16%. Maybe that's a little easier to understand.
Yeah, and that sounds like really specific numbers, like why is it 68 not 70, whatever. We're here to
Mm-hmm.
tell you that that normal distribution curve, it's real, and that's just how everything follows in math world. And every trend follows this model, period. Now, what can happen is time can compress or expand that period, meaning that you get to the, the majority faster, or it takes longer for adoption. It's the adoption curve, you might have heard, but every adoption is like this. And here's why it matters. Essentially, those who get in on any type of major trend early, not necessarily as innovators, because those are really the pioneers who really are the visionaries, but even as an early adopter, you're the ones that reap the rewards. The key is to ensure when you're getting in early that this is really a trend, not a fad, meaning it has staying power and longevity.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this in the context of generative AI, like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. And what it means is that if you think it's here to stay, you lose your competitive advantage the longer that you wait to skill up and jump in. However, the downside is, yes, there's going to be some bumps along the way because we're working out the jagged edges of this new technology.
Now, hang on a second, Shari. I think we're getting ahead of the story, right?
Okay.
I think we just
I have a tendency to do that.
Yeah, that's usually my job. I think we should just walk through some of the pros and cons of being an early adopter versus a laggard.
I think that makes sense. I'll start. Let's address the cons of adopting AI early, meaning skilling up right now. The first obvious one is that there's no tried and true model for success yet. There's no step-by-step process to show exactly what to put in and exactly what's going to come out. The bugs haven't quite been all worked out, but they're really good right now.
Yeah, and that's all very true. And from our perspective, the fact that you get to carve your own path is actually a benefit. But for many people who are formulaic and like to know exactly what they need to say so that they will exactly get this every single time, that's not quite where we are with AI. But what we do know is that, as we've talked about in other episodes, it's only going to get smarter. And while we put it at a high school level proficiency right now, if you will, in a human sense, it's going to be a PhD in 3 years. So getting in now while you can is really appropriate. But anyway, there is a risk at this point that if you put something into AI, you're going to get an output that's not exactly as you expected. Which is why human oversight is so important. And you can't just send stuff off and never look at it and expect everything to be perfect. Even if you went to one of our live webinars, you will sometimes see that, we do live examples and sometimes it doesn't always output the thing you like. But the reality is, like that super smart marketing intern that doesn't have any street sense, you literally just have to say, can you try that again? Because I don't think that's quite right. And it does it. And even when you have to ask it a second time to do something like your teenager, it doesn't mean that that's
they'll ignore you and not do it.
Right. That it still doesn't mean that it's not faster. And
right.
There's a pretty good chance with AI today that you're not asking the right questions, but that's a different point.
That's a whole nother topic.
Right. So,
and you'll get better as you go.
Yeah. And so at this point, you are in a position when you skill up now to influence how AI is used within your organization, within your role. And as you're going to be the first one to set up use cases, processes, and workflows. And what we're seeing is that as people are getting together and training together on it and doing these things, there's a discovery that happens with this. Anybody that has been involved in product development, especially iterative product development, knows that where you start out and you as a founder have this vision as this is going to be the thing. Nah, the market dictates what's the thing, right? You get feedback
Absolutely.
from customers and you iterate and you get better and better and better, but you do it faster and you stay ahead of your competitors because you're out there, you're talking, you're iterating. That's kind of where we are with AI.
And additionally, as early adopters, you don't know the exact ROI yet, which might mean that it's going to take a little bit longer for your investment to show the payoff.
And that is also true. However, The limited cost of starting with these tools, which is like $40 or $50 per person per month, is hardly a huge tech investment for any organization and would really only take a teeny tiny win to pay back that investment. So
Right.
we don't have the cost barrier that you might have when you are putting in an enterprise level software that is, 7 figures plus.
Exactly. And another concern for early adopters is the risk associated with the unknown. We don't know what we don't know. And many prefer to sort of take that I'm going to wait and see attitude. And, that's okay if you're talking about llama plushes or Google Glasses, but it's really not okay for transformational tech that we know drives productivity improvements.
Yeah, and Sherry, that's exactly what I was going to say. Fear of the unknown is what keeps many people from joining early adopters, whether we're talking about fashion or technology.
Hmm.
And many new things don't always work out. I mean, that's kind of the nature of it. But generative AI, it's not one of those things, you guys. It's just not. In fact, the reality is there's a much greater risk by being a laggard in this space than there is to be an early adopter. That's just the reality of where we are.
Yep. And for starters, if you don't adapt early, you will lose your competitive advantage, both as a company, but also as an employable resource. And that's whether you provide an outside service as a consultant, or maybe you're an hourly employee or even a salaried position. You're going to be behind.
And, we really can't stress this enough because although we are still in the, early days, as we say, companies are already trying to figure this out. People are doing it on their own. Employers are saying they want people with AI skills. So it's not like we're still in the middle of the early adoption phase, but we are not at the very beginning, nor are we at the end. We're kind of like right in the middle of that. And we really can't stress how important this is. Skilling up on how to use AI intentionally for yourself and within your organization should absolutely be your number one priority today. If you do it now, you're going to be ahead of your competitors. You will already have gone through the learning curve while others are trying to catch up, and you will remain at the jagged front edge of the AI technology as it continues to get better and better. You won't have the following You won't be following a manual because you're going to be writing the manual and you're going to be finding new and unexpected use cases regularly. And there's just not many options out there for transformational change and growth like this. There's really none to speak of that are sitting on your desk right now that cost $20 or so per month. So it's pretty clear from where we stand. You need to join us in the early adopters phase and you will not regret it. If you want to find out more about how we can train your team with the only systematic, methodical AI program that directly demonstrates productivity gains and ROI, just visit xpromos.com for details on how to get going today. And that's a wrap. Remember to like and subscribe and stay connected for the very latest on AI and marketing.